I'm Shantae Jackson with Sandal Blue Foundation, and I'm so excited that you're here for this resource conversation. These conversations are intended to help motor vehicle incident survivors and their families with tools, tips, and practical resources. You are in for a treat. We have Shelley here with us today to talk all about EMDR, and if you don't know what that is, you will soon find out. Shelley, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Now, before we really jump into it, tell us a little bit about yourself and
Okay, well, let's see. So I'm Shelley Freeman, and I'm a certified EMDR therapist, working in North Carolina, Virginia, DC, South Carolina, and Florida, all virtually. And I work with moms on the perinatal journey, anything, gosh, from birth trauma to NICU experience to postpartum to bereavement and loss. And then also EMDR for couples in a perinatal crisis. Um, and I'm also a consultant in training, so I help other EMDR therapists really hone their EMDR skills.
that's so wonderful. Now, you keep saying the phrase EMDR, and I don't want to go any further before we explain what that is. So do those
Mhm.
letters stand for something? Tell us what EMDR is.
Yes. EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And essentially, what it is it's 8 phases. And we are using bilateral stimulation. So we're using like eye movements back and forth, or we're moving like taps back and forth, or like on your lap. You can also do bilateral audio back and forth, or even like a dot on the screen going back and forth. It's really about this dual attention to one foot and right here, right now, in this moment. And then the other, just noticing the thoughts, the feelings, the body sensations that come up as you connect to and sink into the target memory that you're reprocessing. And EMDR also, we can work in the place in the past and more of the present, more recent, and then also even future scenarios. Um, yeah.
Okay, wonderful. So, as far as EMDR goes, it sounds like what you're doing is working with moms, but is it
Mhm.
something that is helpful and available to everybody?
Yes. And really, we're really working with this piece of trauma. Yeah,
Okay,
it's for
wonderful. So, yeah, so it's something that is helpful for anybody that's kind of working through some sort of a challenge or a trauma that they've been through. Okay, so when I hear of EMDR, when I first heard of it myself, I was like, I don't understand how moving my eyes is helpful. So, tell us a little bit about how it does what it does and how it can be helpful for those that have experienced trauma.
Yes, you can do it in so many different ways. It's really just the bilateral stimulation piece, which is so important. Um, and typically, I like to try to start there, is with the eyes if someone can tolerate it. Now, if they've had, like some people, if there's a TBI, or if, they're prone to migraines or things like that, sometimes the eye movements can be uncomfortable. And so, really, we just work with you about whichever form of bilateral stimulation works for you. And you can switch it up, you can change it at any point.
Okay, so
Yeah.
what I'm hearing is it's really not just about the eye movement. It's that
Mhm.
you're stimulating bilateral, meaning both sides of the brain, correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so how would somebody know, like, let's say they've been in a wreck and they're thinking, I know that I'm not quite where I want to be, or I'm not sure why I feel so off. How would they know that EMDR would be a good fit for them?
I mean, I would say, first of all, if you look at kind of the broader picture, did they go something that really overwhelmed their capacity in the moment to cope or to handle it or to deal with it? Was there a big sense of, we think about with trauma, there's like this wounding. And so if you have gone through something and in that, your capacity to work with it in that moment, you weren't able to. You were overwhelmed by it. You didn't have the resources to deal with it. So that could be in the form of, you know, panic attack, dissociation, just really intense anxiety, whatever it might have been. And also, I think then thinking about in your day-to-day life, are you interacting with a lot of different triggers? And you might not even be able to necessarily identify them, but you might be able to feel something in your body, or an image or a thought or just a feeling, and you're like, what is this and why? Like, I'm standing in my kitchen right now. Why do I feel this intense anxiety or like this intense dread? Um, and maybe I feel it in my gut.
Mm,
Maybe I feel it in my body. Or you're noticing, different triggers throughout your day. Um, Getting back in the car, being the driver, being the passenger, um, gosh, hearing different sounds, sirens, all different things. If you're
okay.
noticing that those things put you on edge. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. Now, something that I'm wondering about is maybe the differences between talk therapy and EMDR. As you're describing, maybe you feel, we'll call it triggered more frequently, or you feel on edge, or you feel like your bandwidth is very low, your window of tolerance is small. All of those types of things is what I'm hearing you say. But is there a difference, and what are the differences between EMDR and talk therapy? Because I'm wondering, do we relive these hard moments when we're going through EMDR? Those sort of triggers, are we bringing those up or not?
That's a really good question. The way we kind of think about it is talk therapy approaches are kind of bottom up. So you're not, I'm sorry, not bottom up, top down. So you're really kind of on the surface level, and you're not usually paying attention to too much about what you're noticing in your body. And and I think one thing with EMDR is that we also do some talk component. It's not this mechanical process where you're just going to go in and be like, I mean, there is a structure to it, but there's an art to it. So we're not going to go in and like, let's rip off the Band-Aid and tell me about the worst moment of your life and what happened, and really just like bring that up. We are going to be very gentle in the process. And there's not a reliving. One thing that we work with EMDR is dual attention. So that means we have one foot in the present, right here, right now. Like the client recognizing that they're in their office, they are sitting here with the therapist, they're right here, right now, one foot in the present, and at the same time, one foot in whatever the traumatic event was. So it could be something from the past, could be something more present, or it could even be the future. So we can work with past, present, or future. But it's really this art of having this dual attention to the here and now and to the target, wherever you're reprocessing.
Okay, so there's perhaps a little less of the reliving because we're not talking through and doing this top-down approach. We're more focusing on where am I right now and how can I use this bilateral stimulation to release it. Now tell us, what does bilateral stimulation do? Why is it helpful? What is it actually physiologically doing for our bodies?
Yes, it's really, really fascinating. It's there's this, so let me see. The best way to explain this in a general sense is like we're working with three main areas of the brain. We're working with the prefrontal cortex, which is like all about rational, kind of thoughtful, abstract thinking, like really like this higher order level of brain activity. Then we're working with the limbic system, which is all about this emotional response alarm system. And then we're working with the brainstem area, which is more of these bodily functions like heart rate, respiration, breathing, all of those experiences. And what we're doing is we're bringing up, while right here, right now in the present, it's dual attention. And say with this example of with a motor vehicle accident, and then bringing up, we would identify like, what's the worst moment of that? And other things may come up from before, but say if we're working on this target of the motor vehicle accident, then we would be able to essentially work with all three areas of the brain to get them on the same page to help digest the trauma. Because what
Mhm.
happens in the moment with trauma is that essentially your prefrontal cortex goes offline. Your rational brain is no longer there. And a lot of people have heard the saying, like, he blew his lid.
Mm,
That's literally like you, your prefrontal cortex goes offline. And so, what in the moment with trauma, what is kind of running the show is this reptilian brain, which is very much like the body level respiration, heart rate, dizziness, like all of that, and this limbic system, which is just like firing. And the
mm,
rational brain is like, whoop, I'm checking out. So,
mm.
what we do with the bilateral stimulation is it helps to get all three areas of the brain back on board in this traumatic moment so that you can actually digest things at the body level in the nervous system so that it's amazing some of the adaptive information that will come through this process, and it comes from the client, like it comes from them, like, realizing or being able to bring a resource of, oh gosh, I mean, the sky's the limit. Anything positive, it could be like, I really can recognize like what would have been helpful in that moment for me, or what was helpful. Maybe it was, the paramedic who came alongside you and held your hand, and it was like that. Oh, okay, feel that, notice that. And really, yeah, did I explain that correctly? Or does
Yeah,
that make
yeah,
sense? I feel like I
yeah.
could go on and on, so I don't,
No,
you
it's
tell me.
wonderful. And it's so helpful because, especially when you haven't heard of EMDR and you don't understand a lot about what it is, having a basic understanding of how we're engaging different parts of our brain, it's not actually just sometimes, when you hear about new things, you're like, how is this going to do something for me, right? Like, how is that really going to be helpful? But when you understand that it physiologically is going to shift something in your brain, and that your brain is why you're feeling triggered because you're going into that reptilian fight or flight type of a phase, that doing these types of motions with the therapist is something that can engage those pieces of your brain together to get them on the same page is so helpful. So the follow up to that is going to be, what can I do? Let's say I'm feeling activated at home. I don't have an appointment with you quite yet. What is something that I can do to help kind of ground me, get me back into the present? What are some techniques that you would recommend?
Gosh, I mean, this is the the sky's the limit. I mean, it's amazing, and we spend time in therapy working with this. But I'm trying to think like some of my main go-tos. There's always breath work or mindfulness
Okay.
activities that we can do. Um, do you want me to explain one of those more?
Yeah, why don't you
Kind
do a
of depth?
mindfulness with me? You can kind of
Okay,
walk through it with me. I would love to try it.
okay, okay. And this is, I mean, I recommend this one all the time, and it's so simple, but it really does help shift. So before we start, I always say, okay, let's just start with some normal breaths, breathing in through the nose and then out through the mouth, making that exhale longer than the inhale. And we just do a few of those breaths. And then when you're ready, you can just pause and just breathe normally. And with this mindfulness activity, I think about it as our five senses. So, literally, our five fingers. So, what we see, hear, taste, touch, smell. And if I were to do it, so right now, we're right here, right now, in this moment together. No judgment. Things are not good, they're not bad, they just are. And we can describe, we can take the first sense. Okay, what do we see? Would you like to just,
I
yeah,
would
let me
love
know.
to.
What do you see just around you?
I see your plants,
Hmm.
and I notice the word Charleston on your wall. In my surroundings, I see my computer,
Hmm.
and on my wall over here, I see I have a painting of elephants because I love elephants that my husband got me. And all of a sudden, I feel emotional. So, not good or bad, just is. It's two elephants with their heads together. And I also notice my sweater that's hanging on a hook for when I get cold.
Okay. And what do you hear right now?
Oh boy. A minute ago I noticed that my AC turned off. So I noticed like that I didn't recognize that there was a humming sound until it turned off. And so then that's kind of what I heard. I'm going to focus a little bit harder. I have kids home right now, so I can hear them walking in the kitchen. And the fan on my laptop, I can hear kind of like a low humming noise in the background.
Okay. And what do you smell?
I have a horrible sense of smell since COVID, so I don't smell a lot.
You
But
might
I
even,
do,
yeah.
yeah,
I,
I was going to say, I do notice instantly when you ask me that how much it brings me to this moment, maybe even more than the other senses did for me personally, just because I do have to focus on it so much harder.
mhm.
But I can smell my detergent if I really focus. I can smell my detergent, and outside of that, I can't smell a lot. But it does definitely bring me to right here.
Yeah. So we've done see here. Okay, taste. What do you taste?
I don't taste a lot because I mean, I can kind of taste toothpaste,
Hmm.
and that's about it. That's about all that I can taste right now.
Okay. I always have to remind myself, okay, see, hear, taste. Okay, touch. What do you
Um,
feel around you?
yeah, my hands are a little bit sweaty, probably because the AC turned off. I can feel my chair. I have a pretty decent chair. And as I'm feeling it, I'm noticing that I'm not sitting in it correctly. Like my back is not pushed up against the back. So I'm noticing that I can feel like if I scoot it a little bit, then it would do its job a little better. So I can feel that. And when I put my hands down, I can definitely feel the texture on the arms of the chair. It's a little bit bumpy.
Okay. And even recognizing where your feet are right now.
Oh, good. Okay. So I didn't notice this until you asked me to think about it, but my feet are crossed.
Mm,
So I don't have shoes on, and one foot's toes are on the ground, and then the other foot's kind of hanging behind it. You know, my ankles are kind of behind it. So my feet are down, but not necessarily touching onto the ground together.
okay. And then being able to focus on where you can feel your bottom in the chair,
Mm,
right where that connection happens, and right where the connection is, where your legs are crossed.
okay.
And just noticing that we don't need to change it. We just notice what it is. Yeah.
I love this. And it's something that I have experienced for myself that I've taught my family members to help me with. And if I may just share a quick story relating to this. So it was our rec anniversary just last week. And we always hold space for whatever the day is going to bring up. No
Mhm.
judgment. Whatever emotions we feel are the right emotions. And I was so excited. I just felt excited. We'd made it 5 years. We were putting together some things to surprise my husband at work with some balloons and like more of a celebration of how far we've come and things like that. And we were standing in the parking lot, me and my kids, with these balloons, and I had printed some pictures to put on the strings of the balloons to kind of show the progress that my husband had made. And when we put the pictures on the strings, the balloons wouldn't stay floating. They would kind of, it would weigh them down. And for whatever reason, I just, I just was set off. My bandwidth, my window of tolerance was smaller that day, and I just started crying. My heart was just pounding, right? So recognizing those feelings in my body, and my heart was racing, and I just started crying.
Mhm.
And because I've taught my family some of the things that help me, including tapping into your five senses, my my cute 16-year-old son just hugged me and held space for me to feel whatever I needed. And my daughter gave me a minute, and then she said, "Mom, tell me what's blue. Can you see anything that's blue?" And so I started naming some things, and she's doing this with me, and my son's hugging me. I feel so grateful for this.
Mhm.
And I very quickly realized that my heart rate was slowing down, and I
Mhm.
didn't feel an urge to cry quite so deeply as I did. Now, crying's not bad, and my heart racing is not bad, right? Like you mentioned, we're not judging those things, but it was so amazing and incredible how, because I had taught my family, hey, if I get triggered, these are some things that are helpful, how talking about those five senses, it really does help. So, any of you that feel like, yeah, I'm standing in my kitchen, this example that you gave, Shelley, I'm standing in my kitchen and I don't know why I'm suddenly seeing this image in my head or feeling a pit in my stomach or feeling really restless. Doing this technique, I can say from experience, is really, really helpful. And it's so powerful to be able to do that.
Yes.
Now, I would love to hear a little bit about when things are feeling stuck. I'm sure you have clients that just feel stuck. Maybe they've been working on, these grounding techniques, being mindful, anything like that for some time, but they just feel stuck. Talk to us a little bit about how, EMDR and working with an EMDR therapist can help them work through that, or some things that maybe you could suggest for them to do.
That I think that that is something that often comes up in therapy. And I think sometimes it can happen even before therapy starts. When somebody comes in, they feel very stuck, or as you're going along in the process. And I think one thing that we keep in mind with EMDR is that our brain knows exactly where we need to go. And our brain is really drawn to this adaptive information. And so with EMDR, we don't have to force it. We don't, you know, work in a really hard, intense, forceful way. We just notice. We just notice what comes up. So we notice the thoughts, the feelings, the body sensations, and we just notice it. And it's like this ball of yarn, and it eventually unravels. And in a good way. It the adaptive information comes in, flows in, and it's amazing to see this. Um, and it's so powerful because it's not coming from the therapist saying, "Oh, well, you are enough," or "You are safe." It's like it comes from the client, and it's powerful. So I think in EMDR, we're not afraid to sit with it and just notice it.
Mm,
And we're not trying to fix it and we're not trying to change it. But we know in the capacity for our brain towards this adaptive information that it will show up. And if there's like kind of stuck points along the way, being able to gently kind of intervene by, say, if somebody feels like with the reprocessing, they're very much in this place where they just are feeling in their body, feeling in their body. Well, the therapist could offer what's called like an interweave and say something like, um, and what's the image that goes with that feeling? or
Mm,
what's the feeling that goes with that body sensation. And you're essentially helping their brain to kind of change the channel from the body, maybe and let in some of the emotion or let in some of the images. They also often things like parts work, internal family systems can be brought in to the EMDR process, which is really powerful, identifying these parts of ourselves that hold certain things, um, and being able to get curious about those parts as a part of either the work you do prior to reprocessing or during, because parts of us can show up in the reprocessing that ultimately are trying to protect, but may try to be blocking us from kind of doing the work. And we're not going to, try to get rid of these parts. We're going to gently sit with these parts and ask them what it is that they need. Um, yeah, hopefully that's helpful.
it is helpful. Now, something that comes to my mind is what about the helpers? What about the caretakers? What about my mom, right? What about the people that went through this but didn't go through it, right? They went through it as an observer, and I would dare say it's harder to be the one that's not going through it in some ways. I was both, right? I was a survivor and I also was a caretaker. Both were very challenging, but there's a lot of parts of me as a caretaker that I get triggered in more than the things that happen to me personally, just because when you're worrying about a loved one, that can be really, really heavy and traumatic. Do you feel like there's a place for EMDR for those people as well?
Absolutely, because I mean, we know about trauma. You can have more of a vicarious trauma type experience. We see this all the time with, physicians and nurses and people, paramedics, people, first responders that are a part of this process, right, or witnessing to it. But also the caregivers, like the family caregivers. Absolutely. We know that the trauma there can oftentimes be just as intense and just as important to look at as the person who actually experienced it. And so I would say one of the best things you can do as a caretaker, as a first responder, as a physician, a nurse, anyone, is to do your own work. And oftentimes, our own trauma can be triggered through witnessing other people's trauma. And so it's all important.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, before we close up, is there a practice that you would recommend for, the people that you're describing? Maybe they're in the break room, right? If we're talking about somebody that's a professional, maybe they're in the break room and they're kind of reliving some of their trauma or something came up for them. Is there some sort of bilateral stimulation that they could do sitting in the break room for a couple of minutes that could be helpful?
Absolutely. One tool that I always like to mention to my clients is we want to tap in things that are positive, that are good. So when we're doing the reprocessing, if we're doing butterfly taps, we're going fast to activate. But if we want to also practice the skill of this slow bilateral. So being able to tap in those good things. So we want to practice it before we need it, like any of these skills.
Okay.
But say, like with the example you gave, you're in the break room, and you just you've had a really, really hard time with a patient, they're not doing well, whatever it may be, you can bring up something that brings you joy. Maybe it's your kid, maybe it's like um, your favorite cheesecake that your mom makes. It could be um, you even pop in a piece of candy, or you think on, a beautiful moment for yourself, or your favorite place, whether it's the beach, whether it's the mountains, whatever it
Mm.
may be. And all of these things you would have developed more in the therapy session, but you just want to tap it in. You just want to notice that and just do a few taps back and forth as you're connecting with that positive thing. And then whenever you're done, just pause and take a breath. And then in therapy, we would say, okay, what are you noticing now? And it might be like, okay, a softening in my gut. Okay, I can handle this. I'm doing the best I can. Anything. So we want to tap in anything that's positive. With the driving piece, I like to tell people they're driving down the road and you know, somebody lets them in, and it's just like, oh, that was really sweet. Tap it in. Do a few slow taps
Mm.
right there on the steering wheel and just notice, take a breath. Like, okay, good helpers do exist. Goodness does exist in the world. Or think about your kids and a beautiful moment or how they smell. And you can tap that in anywhere. You can be right on your lap. And no one has to even know that you're doing it. So
Yeah,
tap in the good.
this is so beautiful because so frequently when we talk about trauma, we're talking about not necessarily reliving, but how to
Hmm.
help our brain process those hard things that have been challenging and that really kind of activate you. And what I'm hearing is that we can tap in our grateful things, the beautiful things, the positive things. And how powerful is that to focus on, like you mentioned, the smell, right? The smell of your kid's hair and tapping that in. And then when you're in a moment that your brain or your nervous system is activated, you can go back to that because you've really focused on it. You've allowed yourself to be present in that moment. And so then you can allow yourself to have that beautiful moment again, to bring back in the good. And I'll just say, Shelley, just your presence feels very calming. And it's so empowering to be around somebody that can help you recognize that there's still good to be had and how to find it. And then also how to utilize that for the hard things. We're not ignoring it. You've talked about that a whole bunch, how we're not pushing aside those hard things. We're not even judging them. We're just allowing them to be. And it's very apparent in talking to you that you're very good at that, at holding space for those things. And I feel instantly like I could tell you anything and everything and work through it because I feel safe in doing so because I can tell that there really is no judgment. There is
Hmm.
no judgment. It's not good or bad. It just exists. And then
Hmm.
what we do with that and how we want to deal with that and what we want to do to process it.
Hmm.
Now, before we finish, is there anything that you would like to share with everybody or that you wish I would have asked or that you'd like to leave people with?
I think one of the simplest ways, one of the best thing that we can do for ourselves is really go back to basics and really thinking about how am I eating? How am I nourishing my body? How am I resting and sleeping? How am I moving my body? Connecting with my body. Do I need to move in a more gentle way today?
Mm,
Um, I think really getting back to some of those basics like sleep, rest, nourishing our bodies, joy, playfulness. Um, yeah, some of those basic things are just so important. And when you go through something traumatic, it can really kind of just go out the window because you're kind of in survival mode. But if you can bring it back to, okay, how am I getting my fluid in? How am I resting my body? How am I taking medicine that I need to? How am I like really back to basics? How am I protecting my sleep? Because you need sleep to heal.
this is so beautiful to hear. And one thing that you said was joyfulness. I remember multiple times in my own journey, I have had this thought of, I don't know the last time that I laughed. And
Mhm.
my by nature, I'm a happy person, But I would have these times that I was like, I literally don't know the last time that I laughed. And so we would purposefully seek joy. And sometimes it was, physical. We feel joy when we're outside. That's something that we really enjoy. But sometimes we couldn't do that physically. We couldn't actually get outside. And so we would put on comedy shows, right? Like comedians. And I would laugh and I would have this feeling of, oh my goodness, this feels so good to laugh, right? Because I hadn't felt that in such a long time. And how important is it for us to have those basic things because our body can't
Mhm.
heal without food and water and sleep and joy. Like you mentioned, medications, the things that our body needs right at that moment are so important for us to be able to process the trauma that we have gone through. Shelley, thank you so very much for being here with us. We really appreciate your knowledge and the peace that you bring and the ability that you have to show us that whatever our journey looks like is exactly right. There's no guidelines to it,
Yeah,
that it can be messy. And as you mentioned, it can untangle over time, but that it is what it is, and there's no right or wrong in it. We're
yeah.
we're grateful for you, and we're grateful to learn more about EMDR. And anybody that's looking to find out more information, please contact Shelley. All of that information's in the show notes. And with that, we hope your journey gets a little easier. Thank you, Shelley.
Thank you.